What's up, everyone? Welcome to Unmasked, where things are discovered, uncovered, brought to the light, and made known. I'm your host, Lamar Bryant, coming live to you from PG County, Maryland. If you're interested in finding out about the untold stories behind being a college coach, this is the show for you. Being a former assistant men's college basketball coach for 16 years, there are so many untold stories behind the scenes in the life of a college basketball coach. Now, let's unmask them. Today's guest is a young and bright assistant. And I always say young and bright, even though he played professionally for 8 years, and we'll talk about it a little bit. But he's been in the business now as an assistant coach, 10, going to go on 11 years now. And so young and bright assistant coach with a great basketball mind, excellent talent evaluator, great teacher on the floor. And then I think he's a future head coach in this business. Like I said, a bright mind and all those things that he have, those ingredients work well for him to be a very good head coach in the future. And then, he's a native of, and we talk about, different people. He's more of a world traveler. I say Collegeville, PA was probably his last stop as a young man. But he's been a person that's, born in Nice, France, and had a chance to go to Saudi Arabia. Parents were professional athletes. And then he actually came and actually lived in Long Island, New York, right across the street, or right near in East Meadow, right in Long Island. And from there, he came to Pennsylvania and that's where he spent most of his young, I'm going to say young teenage years through high school and before that, going on to college. But Bill Phillips, and I'll talk about him a little bit. We're bringing Bill Phillips to the show. Talk about him a little bit. He's also a former player started off at William and Mary College. After that 1 year, transferred. He was actually on CAA Rookie of the Year, I believe. Then he went to St. Joe's, where he had a great career for 3 years, had an outstanding career at St. Joe's. Even got into the Hall of Fame, got nominated, or he's been selected. He was selected to be in the Hall of Fame in 2010. So, like I said, an outstanding career there for 3 years. And then from there, he played professionally for 8 years. He was over in France and Greece, Spain, Italy, Germany. So he had a great 8-year career before coming back and getting into coaching. And he started off back at home at Philadelphia University for years, an assistant coach. And then went to James Madison with Matt Brady, who was, a Philly guy as well at the time, and had left, was at Marist to St. Joe's, but had a chance to work for Matt, where he was a director of basketball ops for 1 year, and he was an assistant coach for 4 years before now, going into a conference team, staying in the Colonial Association at the University of Delaware, where he spent going into year 5, where they've done a tremendous job of turning the program around and getting them back to where they were. And so looking for a lot of big things at Delaware, and also looking for a lot of big things for Bill. So I want to welcome to the show, Bill Phillips. How you doing, Bill?
Lamar, thanks for having me. Phenomenal intro. I think I'm going to need to have you introduce me to more people in the future. I appreciate that. But, I look at you as a guy that I've competed against. I feel like we've competed against on the coaching sidelines, on the recruiting trails, and finally good to kind of, break down those walls and have this conversation with you. So thanks for having me.
No, you're welcome, man. And it was definitely a guy I wanted to get on. Like I said, I think you're tremendous for the business, and I think you'll be even better once, you get your own program. And like, I think that's going to happen. I know, you still got work to do with Delaware, but I think you'll be terrific in this business as a head coach. But you know what? We're going to get right to it. We're going to get unmasked. First question I like to ask, like, you jumped into it, you were at Philly U, and then you was at James Madison. But the playing side is different. There's no handbook to being a college coach. Tell me about your first day, first week, first month after things are done with human resources and orientation. like especially like when no one gives you direction. Like they don't. It's like this is what it is. It's got the job. Talk about that, and it could be at any one of the stops that you want to talk about.
Yeah, well, I'll start at the beginning, and it's funny you say, no handbook, because that first job I didn't even have orientation, and there was no HR. It was basically a full-time volunteer position at Philly U. Ironically, I had interviewed for another spot in that conference, and the guy had just got the job, and he needed two assistants, and it was actually that one would actually been a part-time job, and it came down. He took these other two guys, and I remember he told me, "Yeah, I took those two because I really needed some grinders," and I was like, I felt slighted at the time, um, because I'm a guy who didn't even start as a junior in high school on his team, and then worked his way up to some of those things that you were talking about in the intro. So I feel like grinding is the only way that I made it as a player, and so I took that as a slight and as an offense. And then luckily, Coach Martelli um, connected me with Herb McGee at Philly U. It was Philly U at the time. Now, obviously, it's Jefferson U. But and like I said, full time volunteer, no money. Probably lost money on the year because I was paying my own recruiting expenses. But I show up there, and Coach McGee grabbed me, took me on the court, and just asked me a couple of questions like, what are you going to teach these big guys? Blah, blah, blah. And we talked about a couple of things and just kind of connected in the basketball sense. And we grabbed lunch, and he offered me the job. So I took it and ran, again, full-time volunteer. But man, what an amazing year to work for a guy who's in the Naismith Hall of Fame, just an unbelievable mind, just so good to just be around him and just soak up that knowledge every day. And, one thing that I remember from that year is I was in his office when he received the call that he was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And that was really cool moment. Obviously, it meant a lot to him, and it was well-deserved with everything he's done there, and just, how many wins he has and all that stuff. But really cool moment to be there for that.
Awesome. And he's still coaching almost 11 years later, which is more interesting within itself. So it don't look like he's slowing down either. It's like, wow. I mean, he what is he? Definitely got to be close to 80 right now, I believe, right?
I think so, yeah, because I remember I was still at JMU when he had his 70th birthday party. So, yeah, probably 77, 78.
Wow.
But, he would, he called me Billy. He would say, "You know what, Billy, I might be one of these people that never dies." So he thinks he might live forever. And if he lives forever, he's going to coach forever. So
that's Coach McGee. You talk like recruiting, man. Like you mentioned it because you talked about how you had to come out of your pocket for it, and people don't realize. Like, I mean, recruiting is the lifeline of college athletics. Like, you have to be able to recruit good players, good people, good students, and good students doesn't always mean they got to be an A student all the time or a B student, but like someone who cares about academics, and that's what you have to recruit in this business to be successful. I think all three of those have to go together. But like, talk about your best and worst recruiting story that you might have had over the years. And, we don't have to use names, but like, I know, man, there's so many, man. You out on that road and you recruiting, or you involved with a kid you thought you may have or not have. Talk about that. What was your best and worst recruiting story?
I'll give you the worst one, because this one came back to me during the bubble, and you'll know why here. So this was my first year out on the road at JMU, and I'm still learning. I think like you said, the levels I've played at overseas. I think, I have a good feel for what a good basketball player is and what talent is, but I didn't trust that my first year on the road for whatever reason. And there was this pretty tall, skinny wing. And I'm like, man, this kid's a pretty good player and he can knock down shots and nobody's recruiting him, but everybody says he's a Division III prospect and I'm going to go recruit somebody else. And that guy's name was Duncan Robinson. I didn't tell anybody that I thought he was a good player because I didn't want to, for whatever reason, I didn't trust myself. But so that one hurts, right? Because he's a hell of a player. So, I think once you develop that skill, you just got to trust yourself, trust your instincts. And, I was maybe going a little bit by what the recruiting services said and whatnot, and just didn't trust my own eye on that one. So that's definitely a low point in the recruiting. But as far as best recruiting stories, I don't know. I just feel like I've enjoyed all the connections that I've made. I think it's extra special when you build that relationship and then you get to finally coach the kid. They come to you and you kind of build off of, the connection that you made during the recruiting process. So I don't know if I could say there's one that stands out. So yeah, maybe circle back to that.
No, but it's all about relationships. And you talked about it like it's, like that's not a great one. Like the great ones are when you get the kid. That's the great one,
sure.
So that's the whole thing. Like that's the great one. So it's not always like, I know some people like, it's kind of tough to pick one great one, but like, cause you have, when you get kids, that tells you like, that's a great one. Cause that's a great feeling and how much they're going to impact the program. So I feel you. It's kind of a tough question. I'm gonna ask you this though, because a lot of people don't understand the business or the profession, how time consuming it is, how much work coaches put in. So and even these young guys, they think it's just showing up, shining suit, what you see on TV. They don't see all the work that goes into it. Talk about what did you have to sacrifice to achieve your current level of success?
Well, so I'll answer your question, and it took a lot of hard work, but I also, like, first and foremost, I've been very lucky in the connections that I've made in the past because, Herb McGee gave me a chance because of Coach Martelli, who I played for. And then I worked for Matt Brady, who was an assistant when I played at St. Joe's. And now I work for Martin Inglesby, who happens to be one of my best friends and is my high school teammate. So I think not only has my hard work as a coach helped get me to these positions, but I think more importantly, those people know, hopefully, they would say that they know the person that I am. So Coach Martelli has seen me work as a player. He knows the character that I have on and off the court. Same with Matt Brady. And then, being a friend and teammate of Martin, I think he knows the person that I am. So I think, first and foremost, if I was a bad representative at St. Joe's and I wasn't a good teammate to Martin Inglesby, it probably wouldn't matter how hard I had worked. I probably wouldn't have gotten these opportunities. But I think, you put in a lot of hours, you put in a lot of work. I think you put a lot of emotional labor in with your players. We talked about recruiting. Kind of need to be a tireless recruiter. And it's a full commitment. I'm lucky I have a great wife who's very understanding. She actually played Division III basketball herself, so she loves the game. She used to be a teacher and coach at the high school level. She coached basketball, lacrosse, some other sports on the side. So she gets it. She loves it. She loves, being a part of it and following, obviously, our teams and my career, whatever. But so yeah, it's been great. It's been great having her. And like I said, the understanding is the big part.
That's the big part. Long as you got someone that is along with you for the ride and they understand it, that makes it a lot more easier, man.
For sure.
Scout reports, and we all know we just talk about like that's more work. Like people don't understand, like they don't realize that you watching 7, 8 games, or and you're putting in a lot of work. And when coaches do scout reports, the assistants, like we're like you just talked about, you're emotionally involved. Like it's you're making sure that the team is prepared as best as possible. And so as much as you put into it, you want these kids to be invested too. And I know a lot of times we as assistant coaches forget, like, these kids got so many other things going on. So you can't give them too much because it's going to be overboard and they can't remember a lot of the stuff. You just try to give them enough that where you can be successful. But and then we have those times where you have players, you're telling the players, like, this guy's struggling from shooting, telling the head coach, like, he's 3 for his last 30. And then they get in the game, the kid makes his first 2 threes. Coach turning at you saying, Bill, I thought you said he wasn't a good shooter. No, I said he's struggling right now with a player looking at you when a kid makes a 3. Talk about your best and worst scouting report over the years.
Yeah, I mean, that's the worst is, the coach might ask you, hey, like, what's going on there? Or he might just turn and just stare, stare you down and burn a hole through you. That's just as bad. So, it's funny you say that because I think it's something that you have to take pride in. I look at it as another way to compete. Like, hey, like, I'm doing this scouting report, like I'm competing against, the other staff and trying to help our players and put them in the best position to be successful. So my second year as an assistant, so my first year as an assistant, my second year at JMU, we win the league. We get into the NCAA tournament, but we were in the first 4 games at Dayton. So we play LIU Brooklyn. We beat them, which then leads us to the number 1 seed. We actually just stayed in Dayton and played them there. We play Indiana. They got Cody Zeller. They got Oladipo. This is a loaded team. And the way it worked out, our center that year was about 6'6", maybe, strong, thicker body. Rayshawn Goins, helped us tremendously in the CAA, was a big part of our run, but not a great matchup to guard Cody Zeller, right? So we got to come double off of somebody. And, these other guys could really shoot. I think they had the kid Watford was at the 4 or something. He was a shooter, didn't want to leave Oladipo. He's, a big time player. So I'm like, all right, we're going to come off of this freshman point guard, Yogi Farrell. And, you talk about hitting the first, and I think he wasn't a terrible shooter, but he didn't have I don't think he shot the ball particularly well as a freshman. And sure enough, he shot it well that night. And, it was, we had to risk something, right, against that team. We had to do something. And that was the risk, my suggestion. It didn't work out. Probably not the only reason why we lost the game, but yeah, that one was tough. The first one that gets swung around to him, you're just praying he misses it. Maybe it gets in his head a little bit, but obviously we know that he was too good of a player. Now we know, at least now I know, he was too good of a player for that. Hit a couple, and then we're kind of scrambling from there. So that one was tough. And then, God, I don't even know if I remember too many of the good scouts. I feel like the good scouts, you just feel like, hey, I did my job. I'm moving on to the next one. You know, just I guess my last one was we just beat GW, so feel good about that and moving on. But yeah, it's an important part of the business. Like I said, most importantly, something you have to take pride in, and then you have to deliver it the right way to the players with confidence, because they know if you're not sure, they sense it. So you have to be, you have to know it. You have to know inside and out. You got to be able to relay that information with confidence. And I think, part of what you were saying is just to keep it simple. Keep it simple. The most important thing is that they understand it. And if it gets too complex, they might not understand it, and it's going to be really hard for them to execute that in the flow of the game.
So true. I can tell you one of your best. And I want to say you had that scout, Delaware Hofstra, first in the tournament. I want to say that may have been yours. I seem like you always had to scout against us.
I did, yeah. I've had Hofstra the whole time. So
and then it seemed and it got to be extra special because you and Mike Farley, that was I think that was his scout as well. So yeah. I'm sure I think it was. So that's the competitive thing. Two teammates and very close friends. So I'm sure that made it even special. I can remember that moment. Hurt for us, but
Well, and I'll give you one more here because you brought up the conference stuff. 4.5 years ago, obviously we got let go at JMU, with under Matt Brady. So I took that scout, and I've had that the last 4 years, and I think we're 7-1. So the one burns me a little bit, but I'm glad to be 7-1 against the the university that let us go.
I guess that's a special one too. What's the biggest challenge, man, you've experienced since you've been in college coaching?
I think it's just really on a case by case basis. Is just like digging in and getting to learn each player that you're coaching, what motivates them, what makes them tick, and then, in this environment and situation that we're in with COVID and how that's affecting people. And, I think, mental health has become it's always been important, but I think it's come even more to the forefront. And so I think just navigating all that is the biggest challenge, because whatever, like I said, each player is different. What affects them is different to the individual, what motivates them, and really just trying to learn that, not paint everybody with the same brush. And then also, maybe the tactics and the words that you used 5, 6, 7 years ago, times change rapid, and just kind of keeping up and just staying sharp and connected to those guys, and really like getting a feel for them as people. And then I think you're trying to help them as people, and then you can help them as a player as well.
Awesome, man. Like, I've seen you. I'm sitting back now. Like, so I remember when you first came in this business, going back to 2012. I was at American, then Old Dominion. So I've seen you, man, 8 years now, 7, 8 years, and you've always been a guy that come in about your business, you work, and like you have. I think you have a great reputation around the business. But do you ever find there are things about you that people might misunderstand? Like, what are
they? I think, I don't know. I guess that's would be a good question. Maybe I should ask, I should be asking other people. But yeah, I think part of what you said is like I come in and just do my work. I think maybe on the recruiting trail, I'm maybe a little bit more locked in to the task at hand, and maybe not as social as some people. And, I hate to come back to it, but it's that part about being a competitor. like I get out on the recruiting trail and I'm like, hey, like, we're out here competing. We're competing for players. We're representing our program, and we might not be the ball, tipping the ball up, but we're competing nonetheless. You know what I mean? And so I don't hate anybody on the recruiting trail, but I'm also not like, I'm not, we're not there to socialize, right? There to do our job. And so maybe that, if anything, I love connecting with guys away from it. But yeah, I think like I try not to get distracted maybe by that, by anything outside of doing the task at hand.
Good stuff. Great answer. Now we're all educators in this business. At the end of the day, you played for some good. You played for Coach Martelli, which is one of the best guys in the business that I know. And so you had a chance to play for him. You worked with some really good guys. You talked about Herb McGee. I thought Matt Brady did a tremendous job. I thought he did a very good job with James Madison for whatever expectation, whatever people wanted. I mean, I want to say went to the conference, went to the NCAA tournament a couple of times. But he did a very good job there. And now you're working with Marty. So you've worked with some really, really good guys. And I talked about the education part. But like, what do you try to teach or educate your players on besides basketball?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I believe in that whole person development, and I say that like kind of like my mission is to help these guys grow towards their maximum potential and develop as leaders. So developing them as leaders is a big thing, and I use different tactics for that. I think nothing like a good conversation. I ask a ton of questions. I ask questions of them to get them to think. I'm always asking them, having them reflect on certain experiences, and really what I'm getting them to do is just to slow down and think about it for themselves. I try not to be so much of an advice giver as I'm more so trying to ask them questions to help them figure it out for themselves. So it's like that old saying of, you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, you teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime, right? So I'm just trying to get these guys to figure that stuff out for themselves, because as much as I'm here for them to lean on, I don't want them to rely on, always leaning on me, right? Like I want them to figure that stuff out for themselves, learn how to become self-sufficient, and then grow as leaders, you know what I mean? And trying to get them to think outside of themselves. How can they impact other people? So yeah, I think that's, and I'm passionate about that part of coaching.
Awesome stuff right there. Listen, we know this business, man. It's wins and losses. It's, you're in this business. You talked about it earlier, being with Matt, and you guys will let go and things of that nature. But like, what's the most stressful situation you think you faced in the business?
Yeah, I mean, that's the first one that comes to mind. And as stressful as it was for me, it was hard for me to watch Matt go through that. You know what I mean? You talk about our last 2 years. Our last year, we won 21 games. The year before that, we were regular season co-champs. And this is a guy that has, family and 3 kids, and worked hard to get to where he was, and was doing a great job. And to see, that taken away from him was hard. That's somebody, I've known Matt since high school. Matt recruited me a little bit out of high school to St. Joe's. I went to William & Mary for a year and then transferred back to the Philly area to go to St. Joe's. So obviously I've known Matt for a long time. And so that was hard. And then it was hard for me for the next couple of months, not knowing what was going on. And you and I were kind of in the same boat at the time. I remember being out at Boo and us evaluating together, with no logos on our shirts, right? So, yeah, and then those weeks were hard. I think you and I kept doing the job and putting ourselves, in the best situation we could. But at the end of the day, we needed somebody to help us out and to take a chance on us. And so, I don't know how many times a day I was hitting refresh on Hoop Dirt. I mean, my God, the refresh button was getting worn out. I was like, who's getting this job? Who's getting that job? And so that was stressful, collecting unemployment for a couple of weeks there or months, whatever it was. That was tough. I think it'll make you ask the question, like, am I in this? Like, do I really want to do this? And obviously the answer for me was yes. And for you. And so, staying in the business, being patient. And then, like, I started this, conversation by saying I got really lucky that Martin got the head coaching job here and then brought me along, on staff with him. So.
And it's been wonderful ever since. And like I said, you guys are, like I'm just waiting to see when it's, you guys are cutting down those nets and things of that nature. Because like I said, you guys you built that program and back to where it was, and I'm sure you guys will be excited just to see all the fruits of your labor once you do get that. So I root for you guys, and I saw you a few times last year, watching you guys. So I've seen what you guys have done. I always ask this question. It's entertaining because you've been in this business long enough and you've seen some wild and crazy things. But like, what's the strangest thing you have seen from a player that's done outside of the basketball court?
Outside of the basketball court, man, I can't think of one as a coach. I was telling somebody this story the other day about being overseas. And so this was not, obviously, I wasn't coaching, but a story that I heard, which is hilarious, is there was a guy in the town over from me, and he hadn't been paid in months, and he was getting to the point where he was thinking of going home. They owed him so much money, blah blah blah. Didn't look like he was going to get paid or whatever, so he just decided to go home. But before he went to the airport, he was so mad at the club that he took the car that he had been driving, the team's car, and he rolled this thing off of a cliff. And then he got a ride to the airport, and he kept going. So somebody was asking me about crazy stories from overseas, and that one just came to mind. So when you talked about crazy stories, that was the first one that popped in, that came to mind. So, God, I don't know if anything crazy comes to mind of players that I've coached, and maybe the ones that do I can't talk about. So so we'll leave that right there.
I understand, and that's actually a very wild story. I actually like that. That might take the place of even the coaching one. I actually like that one. So we've been talking about it. You played for some good people. You worked with some good people. But like, let's say you had a chance to sit down and to talk with any three coaches in the profession. You just want to pick their brain. How do they, what makes them tick? Like I said, you've been around Coach Martelli, so you can't use him. But if it's three guys in this business, you like, I got a chance to have lunch with and pick their brain for a couple of hours. Who those three guys be? Like, who would you say these are three guys I would love to sit down? And it could be on the football side, it could be anything. But who would you want to sit down as a coach and like want to talk to?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the thing that immediately comes to mind is I'd love to pick the brains of the three people that are like usually at the top of our league, so I could kind of get some inside dirt on them and know, not inside dirt on them, but like some inside info on how to stop them. and where they think they're weak. That would be great. So, in coaching, I'd love to talk to Steve Kerr. I just think like his idea of like you gotta enjoy it and bring. He always uses the word joy. I feel like you gotta play with joy and create joy as a team. I think that's so important because I think we can kind of get like tunnel vision at times, and yes, we want to win, but we got to enjoy what we're doing. The players have to, have fun out there, and I think if you can find that fun and joy on the court, but still maintain your intensity and focus, I think that's when you're playing at your best. I think like some guys go out there and play angry, and I think that's a good tool in the short term. I don't know if that's a long-term thing, right? So just, if I could pick Steve Kerr's brain about that for sure. I'm trying to think who else. There's so many good college coaches out there. I probably keep picking Mike Bray's brain a little bit just because he, Martin having coached for him for so long. We try and a lot of what we do is what Martin has taken from Notre Dame and brought with him. And, he was a big part of everything they achieved out there. So I think that's just kind of like where our system originated from. So just getting it kind of like from the source, you know what I mean? Would be great. And not to mention Coach Bray's, I think like one of the characters out there in this coaching profession for sure. So I think I'll leave it at 2. I can't think of anybody outside of that off the top of my head though.
You might be a smart man. Just keep it at 2. I like that. I like to ask, what's the biggest accomplishment you've experienced since you've been in college coaching?
Ironically, it's one of the ways. Obviously, like I said, we competed against each other, but I feel like we've connected recently through Kevin Sutton and his concept of living trophies, right? And I think my biggest accomplishment in coaching is when I see the players that I've coached previously being successful and happy in life. So, whether it's guys that are still in school getting masters and PhDs, or guys playing overseas and having successful careers. And I got a former player who's playing in Germany, and he may never come back to the States. He loves it. And he's found a life for himself over there, and he's going back to school in Germany to get his master's, and he's playing at the same time. So just stuff like that. When those guys are successful, then I feel good. I'm so happy for them, but also feel good. Maybe I'd help guide them along the way or whatever. But I think that's the biggest thing. I watch, former players, be great fathers. You know what I mean? And I think that's the stuff that makes you feel good.
I totally agree with you. A lot of time, everyone talks about, they say, oh, wins and losses, and they can remember the championships, but that's what people don't realize. Basketball, it's so much bigger than just playing games all the time. I don't think a lot of people understand that. It's the relationships you build. Hey, are they inviting you to their wedding? Are they calling you when they're going to have their first child? Or,
right.
They got a big, hey, I got a big interview. What should I do? What should I say? Those are the things that you love, that you cherish for life. So I totally agree with you on that, Bill.
For sure. And you talked about being invited to your players' weddings, and I watched a couple of these, and the one was with TJ, right? I think Sorensen, he mentioned that. And, one of the players that I coached my first year at Philly U, I had actually asked him to marry me and my wife. He was actually going to officiate the ceremony for us because of that relationship. And he was actually in divinity school. So because he was going to become a preacher, he didn't want to officiate the wedding before he was ordained. So it was a little, so he, we didn't want to do that, put him in a weird spot, but he ended up he ended up blessing the meal for us. So, so yeah, like you said, those relationships are, so valuable.
That's awesome. And I was just spoke of wedding. Like, man, I'd go back with you probably before you even got into coaching, Phil Jr. and Mike's wedding. Like, I mean, like, so that goes back to then. You know what I'm saying? So I was in both of them. That's how far that goes back. Remember you just seeing you then. Actually seeing you as a player. That's amazing. I think I was just getting into college basketball then. I like to ask, like, what's your favorite word or phrase that you like to use all the time?
So there's like 3 words, and not to get too philosophical here, there's 3 words that I like try and live my life by. And it's love, grow, build. And it's love what you do, grow who you are, and build something greater than yourself. So that's just kind of something I try and live by each day. I don't force feed that down our players, but like they know that that's something, whether I use that on social media or whatever, like they're aware. And sometimes they'll be like, Coach, what are those 3 words? Like, what is that about? And and I'll just kind of talk to them about it and get them thinking a little bit. So yeah, not necessarily a phrase that I use when speaking, but just something I try and live my life by.
That's 3 powerful. That's 3 powerful things right there. Like, I mean, it's simple, but it's powerful. I actually love that. I like that. I'm gonna use that somewhere. I know I am. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
It's funny. I heard you ask this on another show, and the thing that came to mind was I think it was my first Final Four that I went to. So I just got done that first year at Philly U, and Jim Barron I think he had coached against me when I was a player, and then he had just got let go, I think, from Rhode Island at the time.
Yep. Yes.
And he walked past me at the Final Four, and he had just got let go, and he remembered me, and he goes, Bill, whatever you do, get out of coaching. He said, get out of coaching. He said, do not do this for a living. And so I thought that was pretty funny at the time. And it's a tough job. There's going to be ups and downs, but I'll tell you what, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I love what I do each day. And yeah, you just got to be, ready for whatever comes your way.
Wow, get out of the business. As they get older, a lot of guys tell the younger guys that, get out. You don't want to do this. Yeah. But you just went through it, so you're trying to tell me not to.
Right, but, exactly.
I'm gonna ask you this: what does success mean to you? Because like so many people get caught up in, oh, you got to win this amount of games and these amount of championships. But like, what does success mean to you?
That's a good question. So I think success, is doing something to the best of your ability. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that you keep building up. So I think, like you said, this is our 5th year here, and we've been building every year. So I think, our dream and our goal is to win a CAA championship. But we've been building up to that. So that's probably not the right bar of success for year 1 or for year 2. And I think we're building up to that level. But yeah, so I think that's the definition of it on the court. But I think I go back to when you asked me about achievements, right? The achievements is those players. So if we've made them better people and set them up for a successful life, I think it's really important to help these guys prepare for life after school. You know what I mean? And they all want to play play basketball after college, excuse me. But and a lot of them will, but maybe not all of them will. You got to prepare those guys for life right away. And then the guys that do play, there's a lot to life besides just playing professional basketball. Then is, managing their money, managing their relationships, and then what is life going to look like when they're done playing basketball as well.
So true, man. You've never been a self promoter. I think you're a selfless guy, which is a great thing. Like, if you had to choose three adjectives to describe yourself, which would you choose?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a good question. And you're right. I don't love talking about myself. So even more challenging. Um, I kind of go back to those three words that I use, love, grow, build. I try and love people and love life, and I think a big part of that is comes back to gratitude. So I try and be I try and be grateful every day. And then grow, I definitely challenge myself to grow every day. I read a lot, and just try and expand my knowledge and my thinking and that type of stuff. And then building something greater than yourself. I do try and make sure I have some kind of impact on those people around me, every day. So, I think those are the three words that I always come back to.
Awesome. Three great words. Speaking, you say you read every day, and I want to make sure I say something about this before we, end. You during the pandemic, I don't know if it started during the pandemic, it was even before that. You just released a book. I know you've just written a book. We want to talk about that a little bit before we even go on and ask you the next question.
Yeah. So the book is called Mental Vitamins. It's a daily dose of inspiration and insight for the aspiring athlete. So I actually started this years ago, and it kind of originated. They say a lot of these things is kind of like you're scratching your own itch. So there's been times during the seasons where I'll send I'll send them a quote every day, and kind of out of that, I was like looking around and they have these daily reads, right? Like 365 days a year of this and that. But like, I didn't find one that was just tailored for athletes. There's some great ones out there. There's great ones about leadership, whatever. But I was like, man, there isn't one that's just really geared towards athletes, I thought. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna start this project. And I found quotes, and I would write a passage, kind of connecting that quote to the journey of becoming the best you could be. And like I said, I started a couple years ago, and maybe had written like 150 pages of it by the time the pandemic hit. And then I had extra time. Before we talked about how much time commitment this coaching thing takes. So I have not had a lot of time in the past. The pandemic kind of opened up a little bit of that, and I was like, man, this is the opportunity for me to complete this project. So I might have had 150 entries done before. I probably wrote another 250, got up to about 400, and I trimmed that down to 366. So it's one page for every day of the year plus the leap year in there. And then yeah, just self-published this on Amazon, so it's available on Amazon. And yeah, the feedback I've gotten so far has been great. People have enjoyed it. It's nothing. My wife is a principal, and somehow one of these books made it into one of her students' hands, and the parent, texted my wife and said, "Hey, tell your husband we're loving Mental Vitamins. We read it before she goes to bed every night." Blah blah blah. So like, stuff like that's pretty cool. Yeah, it was a good project to get done. I was excited to do it, and the feedback's been great. The support's been great. So I can't ask for much more.
That's awesome, man. I got to make sure I read it. I remember when I saw it when it first came out, and I think Kevin Sutton mentioned the book. So that's
Yep.
something I definitely have to get and definitely want to read, and support you as well. So I'll definitely check that book. Definitely get that. I might ask my wife to get that for me for Christmas. That might be the need right there.
Awesome. You know what? And it's funny you say that for Christmas, because I got a really cool text, and I don't want to give the name, but it was a mother who has two kids playing college basketball that I had recruited and not coached. And she said, you know, my two boys are getting your book as part of their Christmas presents this year. And I was just watching her son play on TV the night before. So it was really cool. Really cool.
Awesome. What person and or event has had the most influence on your life?
So I would say when my career ended as a player, you know, I was coaching that year. I was coaching at Philly U. I had two surgeries my last 2 years playing. I got the job at Philly U thinking that I was going to get into coaching, but leaving the door open to maybe going back overseas. But I was recovering from an Achilles injury. And then during that season, I had to have another surgery on my Achilles at the time, and then which essentially ended my career. And then at the same time, I got divorced from in my first marriage. So it was just a time in my life that was like really tough. My, playing career over, marriage over, just starting over in a lot of ways. But I tell people like that was like the worst thing that ever happened to me, but it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because it made me a lot more humble, made me a lot more grateful. And going to coach that team every day, I found my purpose at that time. And yeah, it was tough, but I feel like I came out the other side like a different person. And like I said, with this passion for coaching and for impacting young people that I didn't have, I honored that I could admit that I did not have when I started coaching. When I accepted that job at Philly U, I didn't have that. And then when all that happened, like it clicked on, like it was like I found it. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Like, I mean, you like to hear stories like that. Like you said, best and and worst, but best, and so it just works out for the. Sometimes, yeah, you want the questions, you want the answers to the test, and they give you the test, but sometimes you got to study and you learn from it, and it makes you better at the end. So I salute you for that. I like to end with this question a lot of times is what, like, knowing what you know now, because this you got in the business, like almost 11 years ago. What would you tell your young self to prepare for as an assistant coach?
I would tell that guy, you don't know Jack. So, uh, you know, just I think I did a good job of soaking up knowledge around the people, with the people that I was around, but I could have done a better job. I could have been a little bit more humble, probably coming from playing overseas. I probably had some ideas of what things should be like, or you know what I mean, and had probably stronger opinions that I needed to, and that type of stuff. So just be even more humble, and just keep learning, trusting the people around you, and trusting their experience.
Well, look, Bill, man, I thank you again for being a guest on the show and being unmasked. Is there anything you want to leave with the people before we go?
I want to say thank you to you. This is great. The ones I watched were awesome, and so I tell people, check a bunch of these out. I really appreciate you having me on here. And yeah, and I'll go back to those three words: love what you do, grow who you are, and build something greater than yourself.
Oh, those, like I said, I'm using that, man. Just to let you know, I'll make sure I give you credit. And thank you, man, for saying those wonderful things. I appreciate it, and letting people know about the show as well. And I want to thank you, viewers, for watching another great show. Stay tuned for the next guests as we get them unmasked. See you next time, and stay safe. And Bill, good luck to you guys. You know I'll be following you guys. I was away for a year last year, but I got a chance to see you guys a few times, and I want to make sure I'm definitely, hopefully open it up and I can get out and watch games. I know I watch a lot on TV now, still doing this stuff, but I just want to say good luck to you guys as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm going to have to start picking your brain for scouts.
You can do that, man. All right. Take care.
Thanks, Lamar. Appreciate you.